Again, these are the two files you're going to open up, the start and end. So this is what we want it to look like. Okay. Obviously, we're not going to make it look like exactly like that, but close enough in terms of the colors and all that kind of stuff. So if you go to the start, you'll notice that you have it already sketched out. So somebody already sketched it out for you, or basically drew it out. Now for your assignment, I want you to draw something out yourself, which using the pencil tool, which you'll see we'll use in a few minutes in terms of doing some simple things in terms of completing the sketch using the pencil tool. So you'll sketch out something, and then you're going to apply colors to it. Okay, that's the idea. To do that, you'll want to start with, as you see here, the drawing layer. So as you can see in the drawing layer, you already have it sketched out. If I click on the eye there, notice it disappears, right? And the reason you're seeing the checker background because it means it's transparent. So this again was drawn with a pencil tool, and then it was basically put in this one layer. We're going to apply the colors to this, as you saw over here. We're going to apply those colors in the painting layer. So to start with, we'll need to create our own layer here. So as you can see here, we'll click in the, make sure your layer palette is up. And then we're going to create a new layer. Everybody should know how to do that, which is that icon right next to the trash can. We'll call this the painting layer. Okay, so the idea again is that most of the, all of the painting will be done in that layer. So if you notice I start doing it in the drawing layer, say something. I try to pay attention, but sometimes I go going back and forth and stuff like that. And hopefully you'll notice too that you should be putting your colors in the painting layer. All right. All right, so to start with, we'll go ahead and color in the coyote here. And you saw that it's a dark, there was different shades of brown to the coyote itself. So one of the ways that we can limit so we don't go beyond the lines type thing in terms of when we draw is that once something is drawn already, we can select inside of it the drawing because it's got boundaries around it. So if we select inside of it, then whenever we paint on there, it'll just be painted within those selections. Okay. So using our tool palettes, and by the way, let me, before I forget, well, we're going to start with the Magic Wand tool, but let's reset the Magic Wand tool, or let's reset all the tools. If you remember how to do that, you're going to put your cursor, once you select the whatever tool you're in, it could be the Magic Wand, it could have been the selection tool or rectangular marquee tool, any one of those would have worked. In the option bar in the top left corner, I'm going to just put my cursor on the Magic Wand on the option bar that you see there, right mouse click and select reset all tools. Again, this should be a habit you should get into just so that you don't, if you have any problems or anything like that when you're painting, sometimes that's what happens is that somebody else was on your computer or you would admit maybe you were on there before, maybe you changed the opacity really low and you're trying to paint or you're trying to type and it's not showing up very well, you forgot that you changed the opacity. Well, all you have to do is kind of reset it and then it'll be usually resets to 100%. Okay. So now what we want to do here is, as I was saying before, using my Magic Wand tool, I'm going to go click inside. Now here's where I go back and forth. So I'm going to go to the drawing layer, because notice if I'm in my painting layer and I click inside the coyote's head, thinking, okay, I'll just select the inside of the coyote's head. Notice what it does, it selects the whole layer. Notice that the selection is showing up all around the layer. You see the little dancing ants, the rectangular, all throughout that one layer, right? So that didn't select the inside of the head. So I'm going to deselect that. Reason being is because, again, I'm in the painting layer, and there's nothing there for me to select. So I'm going to make sure I go into the drawing layer, and I click inside the head. Notice now the inside of the head is selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key because I'm going to add to that selection. Remember, Shift adds to the selection. I'm going to click inside the body. Then I'm going to click the tail, because the tail has been, in terms of the tail has been drawn out to the from the outside of the body. So now the head, the body, and the tails are selected. All right, I did that in the drawing layer. So,
Hold down the Shift key.
correct. Using the magic wand tool, you're clicking inside the head, the body, and the tail.
Well, mine doesn't do that. It does the whole picture.
You have to be on the drawing layer.
I thought we were on the painting.
Okay, now that you have that selected, you're going to jump back. You're going to jump back to the painting layer. So you're going to click on painting, the painting layer. So now we'll apply the paint, the coloring on the painting layer. All right, so now let's go to our paintbrush tool, which is the tool that looks like a paintbrush. And since we reset it, it resets it to a small, to a size 13 paintbrush with soft borders around it, which is sort of what we want. We want to keep it with soft borders, but not necessarily that size, at least initially when I start drawing. So just so you understand what's going on, notice I'll start drawing on the outside of my selection. Notice nothing happens. As soon as I start drawing inside my selection, it paints it. You see that? So that's the nice thing about using your selection tool. Okay, so now what we want to do is apply this color right here, sort of like a brown and then a darker brown type color on there. A couple of ways we could do this. We can go to the color picker, and I've showed you how to use the color picker, but the other way that I haven't shown you is the swatches. So I'm going to pull the swatches out over here so you guys can see that. You'll notice on the swatches there are already pre-made colors. It's not going to be all the colors that you want necessarily, but there are some colors, and actually in today's lesson I'll show you how to add colors to that swatch. So if there's colors that you use a lot for whatever project you're working on, you can add colors to that swatch, and it'll be there when you when you close it and then you open it up again. In terms of if you're on your own computer. So let's look at this right here. Okay, so we've got a light brown color there. So we're going to start using this light brown color over here, the pale warm brown. Everybody see that right there? In terms of my swatches, I'm going to select the pale warm brown color. And then I'm actually going to make my brush a little bit bigger so I can just do it very quickly, just to put that base color on there. And to do that, as if you remember, I can make my brush bigger by using my shortcut keys, the bracket keys, which is next to the P. The right bracket makes it larger, the left bracket makes it smaller. So I'm going to use my right bracket to make it bigger. And I'm just going to apply that pale brown color to it. So again, I don't have to worry about so much about the size because of my selection. Even if it goes outside the border, it doesn't matter. It's not going to paint it. It's not going to do anything to anything outside of it. Remember, for now, we can use the swatches. If you want to use a color picker, that's fine too. But the swatches already has some of these pre-made colors. Again, to bring up the swatches, you're going to go to Windows Swatches, or if you see, it should be up already. If not, again, go to Windows Swatches. And you can do it very quickly just by making the brush bigger and just big strokes on there, and it fills it all in. I see some people are keeping it small and then it's taking them longer to fill it in. Keep in mind, as I said, it doesn't matter because, you know, we're just applying a base color. And then on top of that, we'll put some other colors to it. Anybody having problems? I see there's a couple of people that haven't done it, so I'm either assuming that you know what you're doing, or you're having a problem. If you need help, raise your hand. Okay, I'm gonna move on. All right. So basically now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a darker colors. You can see on the finished one, there's a kind of a darker color applied to it. So we'll go ahead and again make sure we choose a darker brown color. I'm choosing the second from the right in terms of the brown, the dark warm brown. That's not the again second from the right. And then now notice my brush is pretty big, so if I apply it, it covers up what I just did. So obviously I need to make my brush smaller. So in this case, I will use my left bracket key. Makes my brush a little smaller so that I can try to apply some like right here, some right here, and some right there. And again, I don't have to worry too much in terms of the going outside the border. Again, we don't have to be exact for now. Just practicing using these tools. And then what I want you to do is practice going back and forth using the bracket keys, making the brush smaller, bigger, as you're trying to, color certain areas. And maybe it's a little too dark. Notice when you make the brush bigger, it applies a softer brush on there instead of a hard brush that you may apply on there if you make it smaller. So again, experiment with that in terms of the sizes and see how that applies on there. Okay, looks like everybody's done with that. So once you've obviously applied the colors, you want to deselect. So we deselect and make sure that you've been applying it again into the painting layer. So double check on that, that you're in the painting layer. So next what we'll do is we'll color the cactus in. But as you can see, we can either color it another way is to, we already know how the way we just did it. Just take a brush, pick a color, and then apply to it. The other way is to use, when you want to apply a base color, we can use a paint bucket tool. And just click and drag and just dump the color in there. Right? So let's try that. Let's go to the paint bucket tool. And then we're going to choose the color, which is kind of like a pale green type color there. I think it's, let me see, is this is the color. Yeah, that's the color. All right. Now, the paint bucket tool looks, it may be, depending on what tool that has been selected before, looks like a paint bucket, or it looks like a bucket with like paint spilling out of it. So if you look up here.
It's a grading tool.
Right. So on some of you guys, it may be, the grading tool may be selected. So if the grading tool is selected, hold, press down on the left mouse on the grading tool, and then you'll see the paint bucket tool below it. And you'll notice that color is kind of like the, it's in terms of the green is that, I think it's this green right here. All right, so like I said, on the paint bucket tool, you're going to just select the area that you're going to apply the, or you know, if it's a closed border area, in terms of your sketch that you've done, all you do is just go to that and then apply it, right? Well, as you can see, as we've seen right here in the painting layer, the painting layer doesn't have any border, anything that's, you know, any sketches or anything that has closed borders in it. So for instance, if I'm looking at this, I'm in my painting layer and I just click on, like, I'm thinking, okay, I'll just apply it to the cactus. You know, it's going to do something like that, right? Because there's no borders for it to restrict it to just the cactus. The other problem, though, if I go to the cactus, then I'm thinking, well, I'll do the same thing I did before with the coyote, is just select it. So I'll use my magic wand tool, then I'll click inside the cactus, but notice it selects everything. Why? It's not a closed border. The bottom, as you notice, is open. So what happens is the selection spills out to that whole layer, right? So now we'll need, if you did that, deselect it, and then let's make sure that we close it off. So now we'll use the pencil tool to close it off. So in your paintbrush tool, left mouse click that, and you'll notice under that there is a pencil tool. Okay, so you're going to select the pencil tool, and so now we'll close off the bottom. Now, keep in mind that whatever color you have in your foreground color, that's the color that will be applied. So on mine, this is, if you remember, this is considered the foreground color, where you see this green tab right here, or rectangle, and this is considered the background color, where you see the white. That's the background color. So I want to make my brush black. So I can either double click here or click once and then go over here and select black. Or I can click on so that it goes back to the default color, which is black foreground, white background, by clicking on this icon right here. That icon will reset it to black and white. Since I am going to use black, I could just click on that, or I could have just done like I said before. So you're clicking on, you're selecting that icon right there. Okay? And then it'll make the foreground black and the background white, the default colors. And which is fine for my drawing here. So I'm going to go to my drawing layer. So go to your drawing layer, not your painting layer. Because if you draw in your painting layer, this is not going to work. So once again, go to your drawing layer, and then just close off the bottom of the cactus. Okay. Then from there, go back to your magic wand tool, click on your magic wand tool, and notice that obviously we can select the inside of the cactus. And I'm going to hold down the shift key, because why? Why would I hold on the shift key when I'm using the magic wand tool?
To add
Exactly. What am I going to add to the bottom of that, the cactus right there? Okay, so I'm adding to the bottom of the cactus. Now, here's something that we want to do here. I'm going to apply the color. Or, one of the things that I could do once I have something selected, so that, watch real quick. I'll apply this. Oops, wrong color. Go to this color.
How do you make your background white?
The background.
Yeah, when you you're doing green.
That's the foreground.
Yeah, you're doing your green in your foreground.
Yeah, the foreground
How do you
color.
get that white box? I can't get my. You have to go to the.
You have to select the foreground. If you want to make the foreground a different color, you have to select it. But you won't be able to apply the foreground unless you tell it in certain situations to apply the foreground color.
How do I do this? I use the pencil tool in the drawing layer.
All right, so we're in the drawing layer when we painted or when we drew the bottom of that cactus, right? So I'm going to jump back now that I've selected it. Now that I made it select, I'm going to jump back to my painting layer. So my drawing layer and I'm painting again, we're keeping it separate. I'm jumping back to my painting layer. And then what I want you to notice is this. Don't do this, but I'm going to you select the green that we're going to use. I'm going to use the paint bucket tool and just click inside there. And so this way, if you'll notice though, when I apply it, it applies it to wherever it's, within the restriction of that selection, which is nice. I didn't have to go to my paintbrush tool and then click and draw it out. Obviously a little bit faster. And that's again, if you're applying a base color, that's what you should have done. Like when I did the dog, that would have probably been easier to do that. Just paint bucket tool. But since I knew I was going to use the brush again, I just kept it with the brush tool. It was easier instead of switching back and forth. All I did was switch the colors. Yes?
What color did you pick
For the green, okay. I just wanted to show you that. Whatever green, it doesn't matter. But I picked the second to the right green over here. This color right there.
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. You can pick whatever green. The color's not that important right now. But obviously, you want to kind of make it look a little bit like the finished product. But again, the color doesn't matter because you're going to, when you do your project, you're going to do it in your own colors, right? But I just want to make sure you know where to get the colors. If you're looking for already pre-made colors, and I want you to know how to create your own colors. All right. So here's the thing, though. What I'm going to do with this selection, I'm going to feather the selection. So what I want you to notice is that when I apply to it, it leaves it does a good job. But notice like right here, it leaves part of it like because of the way it was selected, because of the borders and stuff. So what I'm going to do, notice it's kind of a harsh application to it in terms of the green. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my selection and feather it out about 4 or 5 pixels. So then when it applies it, it makes more of a softer application of that color. You see? So that's usually a good idea to do when when you're applying a base color, depending on obviously what you're drawing or painting on. So with my selection, with it selected, still in the drawing layer, right? I'm going to go to select, modify, and feather. So select, modify, feather. And there I'm going to, in this case, you could choose by how many pixels you want to feather your selection out. You're feathering the selection, not the paint. Not when you're applying the painting to it. You're feathering the selection. So there's a difference there. So we'll try 5 and see what happens. I'm going to click OK. So now I'm going to go, notice that it looks a little bit more rounded off in terms of my selection. And notice that even at the bottom, it kind of merged together. Remember I had it kind of separate, kind of merged down there together. So now I'm going to go back to my painting layer. I'm going to stay with my paint bucket tool, and I'm just going to apply the color. Notice how it applies. It's softer at the ends.
Did you use the paint bucket tool?
Correct. To apply the same color, but again, I made the selection to have a more of a feather type selection.
Did your green go into make a square in the cactus? Because mine went up into the, not in the round area like you have. It went up into the, it made square cactus by doing that.
Number 23. Let's see. No, I think that's fine actually. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Oh, it looks square.
Yeah, well, maybe it's the computer. But you see, does it kind of looks like mine, doesn't it? No, it doesn't look like mine. Let me, well, it looks like it did feather. You did apply the feathering to the selection, correct?
You go into the drawing.
Oh, you know what? You know what it is? Look at your two painting layers. You apply what's happened is you applied the color, the paint on both layers. So then when you do that, it looks more saturated, obviously. Yeah, so go back up on your history panel. And then hopefully that will, do the feathering without doing the paint bucket.
Well, I need to paint first. Okay, then you go to the drawing layer.
No, don't do that. Command Z. All right, so now feather it. So go to select on the menu. In your menu, select. Click OK. Now go switch over to your painting layer and then apply, there you go. See?
So you do that before you do any color.
Yeah, because you're applying, you're telling the computer to, when I apply a color, feather that color out 5 pixels, 10 pixels, whatever it is that you told it to. Again, it's just a technique that you can use. You're not necessarily going to use this in all your paintings, but again, it's an option. I'm teaching you so that you can maybe use that. All right, so again, once we selected this, once we apply the color, deselect it. And so now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to since I still have my pencil tool selected, I'm going to click on that and I'll finish off the landscape scene over here. So I'm going to switch back to my drawing layer. Oops. Switch back to black by using the default icon. Makes it much easier to just switch back to that. And then, and then I'll finish off the scene over here, the landscape scene. So now what we'll do is we'll apply the different type of brushes, and we'll look at some of the different brushes on here. And we'll also, well, let's start with that. So in my pencil tool, I'm going to select my pencil tool, go to my brush tool, go back to my brush tool. And then I'm going to apply the brush tools on this mountainscape scene, right? And again, I'll use some of the colors that are already pre-made for us. So I'll use this deep red on here, darker magenta to start with. And I'll make the brush smaller. Now notice, this time we could use, if we wanted to, we could close this off, using that technique, right? Then apply, select it. But what we'll do is instead we'll use a combination of just drawing, simply drawing, and erasing, right? So the thing to do obviously would be to zoom in. Remember, you can zoom in by either Command plus, holding down the space bar and the Command key, and then click to the spot that you want to zoom in. Okay, and so I'm zooming into here, and that,
Are we doing this on a painting layer?
No, the painting layer. Yes, correct. Sorry. Thanks for noticing that. So right, so we're going to do this. Most of the time is going to be that we're going to apply the paint to the painting layer. Actually, all the time, not most of the time. So select the purple color in there. I'm going to apply the color, and I'm just going to freehand in terms of going over the color. If you notice, now when you get to certain sections, remember you can by the way, you can right mouse click and choose your size there, as you notice with your paintbrush. So as I'm painting or using my brush tool here, if you right mouse click, that's the other way to get the size that you want. So notice right now it's at 9 pixels on mine at least. I can reduce it. I can change the hardness on it. I could already select a pre-made brush. That we're going to go over that kind of stuff too.
If it's not working with the right mouse click, does that mean it's just with the
Yeah, control click. Or you can use the shortcut keys, as I mentioned before, where you to make the brush smaller, which in this case, this is what I would suggest you do.
Can you feather the paintbrush, or can you only feather with the paint? Okay.
Basically, with actually, you can set up different ways in terms of your brush. We're going to do that, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. So I'm just going to do one mount, and then we'll look at some of the options of doing those type of things, or what else we can do with a brush. So if you make a mistake and you go over where you shouldn't, where maybe you don't want to, you can always go to your eraser tool. So your eraser tool, again, you can change the size on it and erase whatever you just applied on there. Then switch back to your brush tool. All right, so now let's look at some of the options in terms of our brush, and then we'll do that. We'll keep changing the options as we add the colors on here. Okay. So let's look at the second color we're going to add, which is like an orangey type color. Again, it doesn't have to match exactly, so don't worry about it if it doesn't, or earth tone color, whatever. So let's look at that. Let's look at on the option bar on the top. You'll notice that you have opacity. Well, obviously you guys already know what opacity is, right? It's basically changing how much visibility of that particular color as you apply it you want it to show. And we've done that with when we've done the previous assignment, we changed the opacity of the layer. And the same thing works here with a brush. So as you apply the brush, you can change the opacity of the brush as you're applying it. So you can reduce the opacity if you wanted to. One of the things we'll do, we'll see what happens here is when we apply the brush, in terms of enable airbrush mode, which is on the top, up here in the option bar. So let's look at how that looks and if it looks any different, and maybe change the flow of it to about 60% as you apply it, and see if it looks more airbrushy, like an airbrush. Yes. The flow affects the airbrush. So if I change to 61% here, I'm changing the flow of my airbrush mode. This number right here changes this particular mode.
Does that make it thinner?
Yeah, it makes it a little thinner. If you apply over it, you won't be able to tell the difference because if you apply over it, it just obviously built on that those pixels that have already been applied, and then you won't be able to tell the difference. But if you look,
What would be the difference
if you notice over here, you see this right here. When I apply it here, and then I take off the. Well, I gotta change that. Let me see that. Notice how much thicker it is, and it doesn't feather out as much. See, the airbrush kind of feathers out a little bit.
So what would be the difference in using the airbrush versus opacity to create that transparency?
Well, one will create a transparency. The airbrush applies it more, again, it creates more like a feathery type of effect. In terms of like with harsh borders on it, as you apply it, it applies it more like like an airbrush, like it would spray on there. So then it would, would create more of that, as I was saying, more of that feathery effect. Again, for this particular area, it's not a good example but I just want you to apply it and see how it looks as you apply the initial set of airbrush there. All right, so now what I want you to do is next to on the option bar, on mine it says 8. If you look up here, you'll notice that it's got the airbrush and it's got the, it says 8 up here because that's the size of the brush currently that I have on there. And then right next to that, you'll notice it says toggle the brush panel. So click that open. And you'll notice that when we toggle the brush panel, we have a lot more options in terms of playing with our brush. That we can add different options on there to make it do different things as we apply the colors. Okay, so one of them, for instance, is wet edge. So if you notice on here, this is the example of what's currently shown right now. This swoosh right here, in terms of it's just applying shape dynamic, regular shape dynamic on it. Now if I click on, then like I said, I click on wet edge. Notice the difference between when I click it and when I don't. You'll notice that there's, what it kind of does, it changes the opacity in the middle of that brush or that application. You can see that on your screen if you click on it. And then if you select it, notice I just checked it, right? Notice the difference. Now again, look at the difference in terms of the application on it. And then if I select it, you don't see it. Watch. Look. See this right here? See this right here? Notice now? When you click on it and see how it's dark and then now, or it's dark without it?
I can see it on my screen. I can't really make it out on the projector.
Yeah, the projector is kind of hard. You probably see it on your screen better. Yeah. Right. And then now we'll apply it and then let's check it out. So so click on wet edge and then, pick a different color or whatever. Again, we're not bound to the colors that are there, so I'm going to just select yellow. Notice when I apply this, well, whatever color you apply on there, or maybe even just apply the same color right next to it. So if you apply the same color, notice I'm applying the same color right next to it. Notice the difference. You may notice a difference on my screen. You'll certainly notice a difference on your screen. In terms now that I put a wet edge on that particular color. Same color, but one is wet edge and the other one's, well, I went over it a couple of times. It would have been airbrush. I should have just applied it one time. You would have been able to notice the difference a little bit better. Yes.
If it's not shown, it's not, if it's still, you can still see the pixels, but I just keep going over and over.
Well, it depends on what you're trying to go for.
Okay.
You know, I'm not sure what you're thinking, but you know, just
Just
fill it in and do whatever. Also, then you know, then try doing, for instance, texturing. Now, the texturing is again, would you use some of the well, you don't have to do the texture actually, but you just notice that you can apply a select. You know how, remember when we created selections when we made a selections of certain areas that we wanted, or certain part of the image that we wanted to use for a pattern. So we can, that you would use under texture, or that maybe you wanted to apply airbrush to it. Again, that option is up there already, but you can certainly select it here. And you can apply color dynamics like jitter. And you can certainly apply brightness jitter on there. Again, I'm going to use the same, notice I'm using the same color, but notice because I have hue jitter, which is basically meaning that it's taking in different type of colors that are about that, within that realm of that color, and then also applying the wet edge brush on there. I'm going to take the wet edge brush and just use the color dynamic and see what happens. So this is just applying the color dynamics.
How do you get multiple colors?
Under color dynamic, so I selected color dynamic and I changed hue jitter to 22%. It was down to 0. But notice it picks the colors within that realm, within that. Yes?
How, what if I can't click on color dynamic?
You can't select it?
Where's
Do you,
your hue?
let me see here. The hue is, okay, first you have to select, you have to check off color dynamics, select that section, and then you'll see hue jitters up there. Let me look at your computer for a minute. You have to select, you have to watch out, look up here. You have to select it. See how it's
You have to
highlighted?
make the thing blue.
There you go. I think you've chosen, you're on the eraser tool. That's why. There you go.
Got it. I figured out why you figured it out.
Right. Okay, so again, the idea is that, and you guys can experiment. We won't have time, but you guys can experiment with all the different brush colors or the different brush settings on there, in terms of what you could do with it. I'm going to turn off the color dynamics on there. I'm just going to finish applying this color to it.
Does hue jitter mean it like takes a bunch of colors on either side of that particular color?
Right. And then jitter means basically it's scrambled, or not scrambled, random. You could have named it hue random, and would have mean the same thing. Okay, so that's applying the different brushes on there. All right, we'll come back to this in a few seconds, or some of this. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to apply if you'll notice on here, if you'll notice on the finished product, there's a sun, on the sun there's certain colors applied to it. What we'll do is we'll use the gradient tool. So if you have your paint bucket tool selected, go to the gradient tool. And in the gradient tool, you'll notice that in terms of the option bar in your gradient tool, it will have it'll show automatically whatever you have as a background and whatever you have as a foreground in your color picker. So in my color picker, right now the foreground color is green, the background color is white. So watch if I change it to red, for instance, it'll be green and red. So notice the foreground color is green, red, and notice when I selected the gradient tool, notice up here it's green and red. So if I apply green and red, notice it applies the green and red when I apply the gradient tool. Right? Because in my foreground colors is green and my background is red. Okay? All right, so you can obviously make your own gradient colors by choosing the foreground color and by choosing your background color. And it'll be that particular, those two particular colors. Now, let's look at the option bar. In the option bar, as I said, you see those colors. If you click that arrow right next to the gradient on the option bar, you'll notice that there are some pre-made colors there already. What we want to choose in this case is the orange, yellow, orange pre-made color that we're going to apply to the sun. So, by the way, as you can see, the first two colors, the green and the red, as I mentioned, is the foreground and the background. But right next to that is also the green foreground to transparent. So whatever color you have, those two colors will change depending on what you have in your color picker. The first two gradient colors. Some people like to use foreground to transparent. Some people like to use foreground to background, which would be those colors. So we're going to use a pre-made color, the yellow or orange, yellow, orange. We're going to apply that to the sun. To do that, we're going to do the same thing we did before, which is select the inside of the sun and then apply it. So I'm going to go to my drawing layer, use my magic wand tool. So go to your drawing layer. I'm going to select select the sun. So it selects the inside shape of the sun, right? So again, I'm selecting inside the shape of the sun. Then I'm going to jump back to my painting layer. So I'm jumping back to my painting layer, and then I'm going to go back to my gradient. I'm going to select my gradient. Now I'm going to apply it to the sun. But if you notice when I click and drag and apply it to sun, it doesn't look like it does in what it doesn't look like it does over here, which is circular, right? So I need to fix that.
Did you get the color in there?
Well, I just clicked and dragged.
Up on the option bar?
No, once I select the gradient, all I have to do is click and drag. Like, see how I'm clicking and dragging? And it'll apply it on there. But that's not what I want to apply, but first of all. What I want to apply is, instead of a linear gradient, remember we worked with this, I think, in Flash, linear gradients and radial gradients. So what we want to do here is apply a radial gradient. Evans, did you have your...
Yeah, on my paper, I have it selected the red, orange,
No, it doesn't matter because those are preset. Yeah. I mean the color you select is a preset color, and you can choose that option, but we haven't chosen that option to use those colors. Okay. Anyway, so what we need to do is obviously change it to radio, because we know there's that possibility of doing that. So we were going to go under the mode right here, under mode. Oh, sorry, not under mode. The button right next to that. Well, it's in this option bar. So the button right next to that, where I'm pointing to, if you notice, you see that it says linear, and then right next to that it says radio gradient. So now in Photoshop, when you click and drag, you're applying that particular gradient. So, but how far you click and drag is how it applies it in terms of the amount. So watch real quick. If I start right here in the top and I click and drag all the way down to the bottom here, notice it looks like we only see the orange, right? Because it only applies, I'm stretching out the applications that much, right? So what I need to do is actually just click and drag within my selection, maybe a little bit over it, not too much, and then it'll apply it on there. But notice I started at the top, and then applied that center part to the top. So what I need to do is actually start in the center of my selection, and I'm going to click and drag out beyond my selection a little bit, not too much. Or maybe I should stay within my selection. Yeah. If I want all that color to be applied there, then I need to stay within that selection. So what you have selected depends on how far you click and drag within that application of your gradient. If it was like the whole image, it would be a different thing how I would apply it. And we're actually going to do that. We're going to apply another gradient in a few seconds here. Well, not a few seconds, but in a few minutes. Okay. So now let's color in the clouds. But this time, what we're going to do is we're going to use colors that are already set up for us. We have some colors, if you'll notice on this image, around the borders, there are certain colors that are already there. Right? You see the purple, you see the green, and so on around the borders of this image. You see that all around the image itself. There's this border that's already has some different colors. So say that we want to use these colors. Well, we can select our paintbrush tool, and then if we wanted to use a shortcut to take a sample, notice, oops, that's my. Anyway, let's look at this real quick. You see this tool right that I just selected, which is my eyedropper tool. That takes a sample of that particular color, and then you'll see it in the foreground color. The other way is that if I have my brush tool selected, I can hold on the Option key, and it'll take a sample. Same thing as your eyedropper. It becomes the eyedropper tool basically. So let's I'm going to take a sample of that green. Maybe in the dark section there. And then notice that my foreground color is that green. So I'll apply some green on here. Make sure you're in the painting layer. If it doesn't apply, like I just tried to apply it, I forgot that I still have my sun selected, so I'm going to deselect there. Again, make sure you're in the painting layer. So just kind of lightly apply it right there.
Did you say control click?
Deselect, Command D. And I'm going to take a sample, still in my brush tool. I'm going to use my Option key again. I'm going to click on the Option key, becomes the eyedropper tool. So I don't have to go back to the eyedropper. And then I'm going to take a quick sample of the purple color. And notice that now my foreground color is purple. I'm going to apply some of that purple on there. So if we look at the finished one, it looks like there's a whisk type of effect applied to it's, kind of like blend it together. Well, we can do that using some of the other tools. Which is what we'll use is the one tool that looks like a water drop, which is on mine is right below. If you notice, looks like a water drop. Mine is right below the eraser tool. That's the blur tool, and we'll use a blur tool, and we'll use the smudge tool. I'll start off with a blur tool, and what it does, it'll blur these pixels a little bit more together. Especially I'm doing it in the cloud. Notice I'm blurring it on the edges, particularly in the around where they come together, and that kind of blends the colors together a little bit. Then I'm going to go back to that blur tool, hold it down hold down on the left mouse click, and select, instead of the blur tool, I'm going to select the smudge tool. And then I'm going to kind of smudge again where the two colors meet, maybe even smudge a little bit at the edges a little bit in terms of the.
Which one's the smudge tool?
The smudge tool is the third tool that looks like a finger that's pressed down, that you're smudging, like. Smudge tool is that little finger. If you look up there,
Oh.
you see? So again, you're smudging the colors together. You're blurring those colors together, which is something again you could do with like the mountainscape scene. Okay, so now the other thing we want to do is we want to apply a gradient to the background, the sky background. So we're going to use our gradient tool to do that again. So we're going to select the gradient tool. We're going to go up to our pre-made gradients, back up on the top there, and we're going to select the violet, green, orange, those three different type of colors there. Violet, green, orange, right next to the orange, yellow, orange color. And then we're going to apply it in our paint layer. But as I said before, if you click and drag, click and drag from the top up, notice what happens, right? It applies it to the whole thing. So and we didn't want, by the way, we didn't necessarily want to apply it to the whole thing, and we didn't want to be radial. We wanted just to apply to the sky section. So to do that, all we need to do is, again, make sure you're in the painting layer this time, but you're going to use the rectangle tool, and you're just going to click and drag a rectangle where the sky would be, where the sky would be, basically. and we're going to switch over, and then we're going back to the gradient tool. So just, a rectangle application to the sky in the painting layer. So you're just going to click and you're going to select the rectangle tool, click and drag out. Because remember, what we want to do is just limit the gradient application to just the sky area, right? So now if I go back to my, just watch, don't do this. If I go back to my gradient tool, I've chosen the violet, green, orange preset colors. Now I'm going to apply from the bottom up. And I'm going to apply the linear. I'm going to go back and select linear gradient. Now when I apply from the bottom up, which is what you see is that's how it's set up on the end image. Notice what happens. It applies it, but it paints over everything, right? Where there's another way that we can do this, so it doesn't obviously do that. We can, first of all, we can change the opacity. That's one of the things we'll do. We'll change the opacity a little bit, so that maybe to about 65, maybe even 60%. So we can type in 60% in the option bar of our gradient. Let's try it again. So let's apply it from the from the bottom up. Better. It doesn't overwhelm it doesn't cover up all the colors, but it does change the colors a bit, right? If you notice, it kind of does change the colors somewhat. It's what the purples used to, or the greens used to be. Let me see. Oops. It changed. It basically changed a lot of the colors that were there. Yes. You could do that. That's one option. There's another option, and you already know about that one. So yeah, you could apply it to create another layer. Well, let's see what happens, and let's see how it looks in terms of the color itself. So yeah, so that one that works not bad also in terms of doing it that way. Okay, so you could do, if you wanted to create multiple layers, that would be one way to go. But I'm going to show you another way, if you don't want to use multiple layers, is to change the mode in terms of when you're applying. By the way, this applies not only to the gradient we're about to do, but also applies to brushes when you're working with brushes. So keep this in mind in terms of when you're working with your brushes too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the gradient in my mode. I'm going to change it behind. So in the mode section, I'm going to change it behind. And if you can think of an acetate paper, and then you apply paint in front of it, right? You apply some colors to it, and then what essentially you're doing is then applying this gradient behind that on the other side of the acetate paper. Okay. So now let's see what happens. So notice essentially you're getting the same thing as Thor suggested, which is to create another layer. Yes, but you're putting it below. Up here on the option bar. So, and you selected the gradient. Then you'll notice it says mode. Okay, click on that. And you might want to also, by the way, you should experiment as you're applying. Notice that under mode, there's some really cool effects that in terms of when you apply colors, like darken, multiply, color burn, and some of them you'll notice it won't do much at all. But some of them you'll notice it really radically changes the color to a really cool effect. And you should definitely just experiment with that, in terms of applying it to backgrounds or to just even a certain object or anything like that. And you'll see how kind of neat it is in terms of applying those different type of modes on there. Dissolve is pretty cool, kind of get a speckled type of of color being placed on there. So you'll see it's pretty neat in terms of the different modes, and you experiment with that when you're applying when you're working with your assignment. All right, so now what I'll do is we'll finish it off by, oh no, we still got a few things here to do, a couple of things. Before I apply a color, which was I was about to do before I apply, like the floor color on there, or the landscape color. What I want to do is create my own brush. So we can create our own brush based on what we draw. So you can draw, a coyote, and then you want to draw a bunch of coyotes all over the place. You can make a brush that is a coyote brush. You can make a brush that is a sun. You can make a brush, whatever you draw, whatever you decide to draw. But when you draw it, though, you need to draw it so there aren't any colors around it, or there aren't any colors with it, and that it's black whenever you draw this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put texture on the floor. So I'm going to take the sun rays and make them into a brush, like a couple of these sun rays. Then I'm just going to apply it throughout the floor there. Okay. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the paint layer. Just going to click on the eye right there. That turns off the paint layer. I'm going to go to the drawing layer. So again, there isn't any influence of the colors that's been applied there. And I'm going to use my selection tool, the rectangular marquee tool. And that's the only tool actually you want to use to create a brush. So I mean, like if I wanted to, I can do this. If I want to make more clouds, and I could make that into a brush, those clouds, by just doing what I'm just doing. Well, that's one of the things you would do. But what we're going to do here, I'm going to zoom in, go closer to my sun rays. I'm going to draw a rectangle marquee around these two the two rays of the sun there. And then remember, you can always reposition your selection by just making sure you're still in your selection tool and then just kind of moving it around. So notice that again, I'm in my drawing layer, not in my painting layer. My painting layer is turned off, so make sure you do that. That you've turned off your drawing layer. Your painting layer. You're in your drawing layer. You're using your rectangular selection tool. You're selecting just two rays on there, which is going to be the texture we'll apply to the ground. Then we're going to go under Edit and define. It's that simple. Define brush preset. The hard part is actually just drawing whatever you want to draw. So you're selecting it, and remember you have to draw it in black, not in color. So if your foreground is purple, yellow, whatever, make sure it's black, and then use your pencil tool and draw it out. So again, define brush preset. Notice I get a sample of what I want to draw out, and then call it ground cover. Give it a name and click OK. So now that's part of my brush, brushes. That you'll see all the different brushes that you can choose from. So okay, I'm going to deselect here. Obviously, I want to deselect. Yes.
Sorry, the define brush preset is not coming up
Okay.
as an option.
Let's look at that. Let's go. Do a quick Command D. Real quick, just do Command D. Okay, so you're in the drawing layer. Move your cursor? What's that out there on the left? Right, yeah, what is that?
I don't know.
All right. I don't think that has anything. I'm going to take over real quick. Let's No, I haven't done attendance.
Shall I start one?
Yes, please.
That's okay, I can play around with it for a little.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. We'll have to play around it.
Okay,
We'll create a new file and then see if that takes care of it.
sounds good.
Okay. Anyway, so I should have a brush that looks like those little bit of sun. So now I'll go to my brush tool. I'm going to zoom out again. I'm going to go to my brush tool, apply those particular brushes on there. So selecting my brush, again, go back to selecting your brush, and then go back to the option bar on the top right here. See what I'm pointing to? Then click down on that arrow, and you'll notice that the brush we just created is all the way down to the bottom. And as you do that, notice all the other brushes that are there. There's like grass type looking brushes, leaves, stars, different type of textures that are on there. And also what I want you to notice is this. If you go up to this button right here, on the top right there, see that button with the triangle? You'll notice that you can select, you have an assortment of brushes here. So you have an assortment of different brushes that you can add to there. So if you're into calligraphic brushes, natural brushes, there's two different type of categories of natural brushes that maybe you may be able to use. Thick, heavy brushes, and so on, and faux finish brushes. So you can let's say I select faux finish brushes. Then you should click is append, not just click OK, because what it does, it replaces the current brushes you have on there. Append will add to that, to whatever current brushes you have there. And remember, we just created a brush, so notice then all the other faux finish type brushes that we've added on here. Okay, so you can add your own brushes basically. So I'm going to go back to the brush that I created. Notice on mine it's 21, and when I put my cursor over it says ground cover. So I'm going to go back to my drawing layer. Make sure I'm in my drawing layer and I have my brush selected. And I'm going to make sure that I have a black foreground. And I'm just going to click and click. And those are my little brushes here and there. Yeah.
I did what you said, but I can't. It doesn't give me a selection of the brush.
Let me see. Give me a second. Number 18. Okay, so you go to the option bar. Nope, not that one. Nope, right there. There it is. See at the bottom?
Not it.
Mm-hmm. Make sure make sure your foreground color is black. And just click. So now what we'll do is finish this off, and then we can turn back on the colors, and we're going to do the same thing we did before when we applied the gradient. I'm going to click and make a rectangle selection for the ground cover, and I'm going to go to my paintbrush, and I'm going to take a sample of this color. And by the way, I'm going to take a sample. I'm going to take a sample using this image right here. So it's another image right? It's the finish image. I'm going to hold down my option key, and notice I can take a sample of a color from another image. So it doesn't have to be inside the same, it doesn't have to be part of the same image. So I'm taking a sample of the brown color there, and I'm going back now to the one I'm starting here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make the brush really big, but I'm going to change brushes, obviously. I'm going to scroll back up to my soft brush. But I'm going to do the same thing I did with the, instead of applying on top of it, notice if I try to apply well, I can apply it, and this is what happens, right? Not a good idea. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to apply there. I'm going to go to the mode, and I'm going to select behind. So I'm selecting the behind mode, and then obviously I want to go to my paint layer, my painting layer, and I'm going to just make my brush size really big. So I just apply it one time. But then now when I apply, you may think, oh, it's screwed up. But actually what I want to do is move my drawing layer to the top. So drag your drawing layer to the top, and it should come out the way you've set it up. So again, now you notice we use the brush in the behind mode as well as our gradient. And notice if right here, if you see, notice you see a little gaps on there. Well, we can fix those gaps with what tool? See right here between these two colors? What tools can we use for that? What would be a nice tool to kind of not try to draw in between it, but just kind of have it blended in a little bit? What tool would I use? Huh? Yeah, blur, smudge, any one of those tools.
Or you can throw a layer underneath it and patch it in.
You could do that too. Yeah, layering is pretty nice in terms of applying it.
When in doubt, use paint. Wait a minute. How did you get that behind?
How did I get what behind? So at the end, what I did is I just moved the layers. Now I put the drawing layer on top and the painting layer behind, or on the bottom. And that's it. So there you have it in terms of the different types of brushes you can use, how you can customize your brush, in terms of different modes of your brush that you can use, how you apply the different gradients that you can use, how you can create your own gradient to a certain extent, just a 2-color gradient. You can actually create multiple color gradients if you want. We didn't go over that, but actually you can learn that when you take Photoshop. But it's not that hard. You just go into the same area and then just start putting your own colors in there, color layers. We use the eraser tool, the brush tool. We use the smudge tool. We use the blur tool. And so, using a combination of those tools, you saw how we were able to apply different things on here. You notice how we use the selection tool, how to make sure you close off when you're using, when you want to apply the magic wand tool in terms of selecting something, or even like when you're going to apply it, if you're going to use the paint bucket tool, make sure it's closed off, because the paint bucket tool acts in a way like the magic wand tool. When you click on it and it applies it, it can still spill over if there isn't any border. So it'll try to fill in terms of only things that are, well, not only, but it'll fill in up to the limit of that border. All right, we are done.